Well, hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. This is TAM Lab number 97. We're going to touch on Skyline Health Diagnostics. And so today, to run through this lab, we have Brandon and Chris joining us. They're both staff technical account managers here at VMware. So Brandon and Chris, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks very much, Bill. Appreciate it. Glad to be here today with you all. Just quick intro. My name is Brandon Hahn. I'm a staff TAM team lead, also a member of the Office of the CTO Ambassador Program. We also have Chris here. Chris is also a staff TAM and a team lead, and we're part of we're part of the Skyline SME team here, and very excited to share with you some news and some updates around Skyline and Skyline Health Diagnostics in particular. So really want to start things off. We're gonna, just for an agenda, just give you a little overview of the Skyline portfolio, so you understand where Skyline Health Diagnostics fits in. We'll do a little bit of an overview of the program itself, the application, run through, show you how the installation process works and how straightforward that is. Then I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris is going to demo some of the SHD operation. And then we'll finish up with some tips, tricks, and gotchas that we've had from our own personal experience before going on to questions and answers. So starting off with the Skyline portfolio, and really the key word here is portfolio. Skyline has really expanded, and it covers really all of our proactive support offerings. Skyline itself, you can think of as a brand, just, like vSphere, includes ESXi and vCenter. Skyline is now a portfolio as well. So it's going to include different products within it. So when we start on the left with Skyline Health, this is the part of Skyline that you've probably have seen the longest, but haven't realized it's been part of Skyline. So this used to be called vSphere Health and vSAN Health. It was built into the vSphere client. Basically, it does some checking with the VMware compatibility guide and a couple of basic configuration checks and health checks to make sure that those services are running. So we've brought that into alignment with what you might find with Skyline Advisor. So Skyline Advisor here in the middle, this is a SaaS service that we offer and really uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us figure out across the broader product set here. So not just vSphere, vSphere and vSAN, but we're also covering NSX, Horizon View, VROPS, and VCF. It does require a cloud services platform account as well as a Skyline Collector appliance. But you're going to get a lot of additional findings that are based on trending support issues within global support, some of the top knowledge base articles that are being accessed, VMware security advisories, design best practices, and other sorts of health checks you're going to see within Skyline Advisor. It also offers the ability to do some automated log collection and transfer via the log assist capabilities. And then you're also going to see the ability to have upgrade recommendations. And once you dive into that, you can see, okay, if I were to upgrade this part of my environment to, from ESXi 6.5 update 3 to say 6.7 update 3, what does that look like from an interoperability perspective? Is NSX going to be compatible, or do I have to look at an NSX upgrade? Is VROPS going to continue to work? Those sorts of things. So that's all within Skyline Advisor. And then what we're here really today to talk about is Skyline Health Diagnostics. So this is the newest edition. It's available as a standalone virtual appliance. It only covers basically vSphere and vSAN. It does not need external network connectivity, unlike Skyline Health or Skyline Advisor, to do the update. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two. It does, those VMware compatibility guide checks. You got some findings that are based on top knowledge base articles and VMware security advisories. But then this last point here at the bottom is really a huge advantage that is not available in either of the other two portions of Skyline today. And this is some automated log analysis for root cause. So this has the ability when you upload or you draw, collect a log bundle, it will go through and actually look at it. And then if it matches a particular issue, it will go through and will show you, here's the snippet from the log that shows what the issue was, and then provide any guidance, whether that's a KB article on how to resolve it or whatnot, how to move forward. So, really, when you look at this from a positioning standpoint, Skyline Advisor is where you're going to have the most feature-rich capability, and is where we recommend our customers to look first. Really where the most value is. And with Skyline Health Diagnostics, there's really two main use cases that it was developed for. The first is for dark sites. Oftentimes, customers have requirements where they can't have public internet access, or they've got data governance concerns. And so the ability to do those, whether it's the security advisory checks or other, VMware compatibility guide checks within a siloed environment is very powerful for customers. So that'd be one reason that you'd want to look at Skyline Health Diagnostics. And then that reactive automated log analysis as well is one of the key reasons that you'd want to look at Skyline Health Diagnostics right now. So that's the portfolio as it is today. There will be some, we will continue to evolve this as they grow and gather additional capabilities. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of guidance on where to look and how these products fit together, to really give you that proactive support across the board for your environment. Moving forward into an architecture diagram, it's relatively simple, and this diagram makes it more complex than it really is. So let me walk it through it. Top left, a green box is going to be your virtual machine. So this comes as a pre-built OVA template, is the version that we'd recommend going with. If you do want to, download your own and create your own Photon OS and then install the application, you can do that. But the pre-built OVA is available now, so we'd highly recommend going with that route. So you deploy the OVA. It talks to vCenter and the ESXi host to collect logs, and then does its analysis. You see the dotted line running up and down the middle. That is, the optional internet connectivity. Optional. It is not necessary. If you do have that, you can get additional updates. Updates to the tool happen bi-weekly for new signatures. Can also go hit the VMware compatibility guide to get the latest information. And then we also do send, if that internet access is there, we do send telemetry data back based on the plugin. So each type of scan that we do is called a plugin. And so we can see how often they are being hit, those sorts of things, and figure out do we need to adjust this, and what are there issues that we're seeing across the board that we don't have findings for that we should take care of. So that's, from an architecture perspective, very straightforward. Singular virtual machine that you install in your environment.
And real quick to that point, there was tremendous value in the solution when you had to deploy the Photon OS yourself and then install the bits yourself. My customers didn't really balk at that, but the fact that we have it now as an OVA is huge. It makes it that much more convenient for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And so we're not going to walk you through a demo of what it's like to install an OVA template. It's pretty straightforward. This is the custom OVA template screen. Very straightforward, exactly what you'd expect. Some usernames, passwords, IP networking information. That's very straightforward. Two things that I want to call out for you. So these are kind of your first kind of tips, tricks, and gotchas of the day. So there is a two-step password complexity verification. So just be aware of that. On this screen, it's checking to make sure that your passwords are the same and that they are an appropriate length. I'll talk on the next slide about what the other password complexity verifications are and when that occurs. But just be aware, it is this two-step complexity verification process because we can't run the logic within the OVA deployment wizard. The other thing to pay attention to is that the default admin account name is preset to shd-admin. When you boot up the appliance and you try to log in, root isn't going to work. Admin's not going to work. It is shd admin. So just be aware of that. Now, continuing on that password check. So there's really three different checks that occur on your passwords here. The first one that I mentioned is the deployment wizard. It checks the minimum password length and that your passwords match. So that's pretty straightforward. During the post-deployment configuration, it does additional checks. It checks for dictionary words using cracklib. And then it also looks at some password complexity requirements. So you need, some upper and lower characters and numbers, as well as some special characters. So just be aware of that. If when you boot up your appliance and you go to the IP address and you see the screen on the right, this first boot password manager, It doesn't mean that you have to throw it away and start over. It just means that the initial root password that you chose does not meet those requirements. And so it's going to ask you to set a stronger password. And so here you can see basically, it asks for that original, deploy time root password, as well as the new root password with the guidance on what it must be, to be valid. When you hit submit there, it will go through, it will rerun the configuration to make sure that the root password is now set correctly. And within a minute or two, you'll be able to log it, you'll get the login for the UI, and we'll go forward from there. So just be aware, the password complexity is something that you need to be aware of, and don't be surprised if you see this first boot password manager. It's easy to resolve. Just it's there to make sure that you can use the tool appropriately.
Now, real quick, just maybe clarification on that. If your initial password at deploy time was complex enough, so met all of the requirements here, we wouldn't see this screen.
Correct. You will see, and the demo is going to be next, so I'll be turning it over to Chris here in just a second. But you will see exactly what Chris will show you as the login screen, and that means you are good to go and your password met all the complexity requirements.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions kind of on the installation process before I turn it over to Chris here? Well, great. I will turn it over to Chris. Chris, I'll stop my share here.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. This is not very complex, everybody. I think you've kind of noticed that, right? It's really straightforward. So the installation is straightforward. I'm not going to go right into the login screen that Brandon talked about. I want to start at the problem, right? What are we trying to solve? So if you think about it, in the environments that you operate in, either you're going blind and things are happening and you're just pulling out logs and you're sending them over to support, or you're maybe using Skyline, but you need to be able to understand and identify critical important areas that you can address, right? So Skyline Health Diagnostics can do that. Here's the view of SHD, as I'm going to be referring to it during the demonstration, right? Very familiar, right? We got findings, we got errors, we got warnings, but what Brandon said is the fact that we get a lot more details with Skyline Health Diagnostics. So I'm going to kind of drill in here. This is an environment. This is my environment. This is my home lab. It's very basic. I'm going to use that for the demonstration, and then I'm going to show you a little more complex finding from one of our engineering labs. So let me just kind of point out this. As you can see, the findings, very straightforward, but if you drill in on this, and this is a report, this is nothing more than an HTML report that you could save, download. It's part of health diagnostics. So let me just expand that, right, and say, okay, show me what's critical. And immediately, it's a simple lab, a couple of versions behind maybe, but because I'm talking to VMware, I've downloaded all this information, so it does a cross check based on how it's going to look at the logs, and it's pointing out there's a few VMSAs that need to be addressed, which is great. I can click on this, and you'll see it'll take me right to the VMSA. And I can do my research, right? And that's a fundamental, basic way of addressing a critical issue. Let's say, though, that we're looking at more important information, right? That would be that, it'll still give me, because it's a lab, it doesn't have a lot of stuff, it'll give me more VMSAs that are more important, not critical. But if I really wanted to hone in on a specific area, look at this, all findings at the bottom. I can click on, for example, my DNS server. And again, it's a simple backend system that I have. It's pointing out, well, hey, your Intel is not really a supported Intel because it's Intel chip. Basically, the CPU is just simple i7, but it did do its check. It's also, so it gave me a little sign here. If I click on, for example, the controllers, I'll get a little more information, maybe a click here so I could go into the details of the compatibility. It'll tell me what's compatible here. So it really gives me a lot of information. And if I scroll down, you'll see again what Bill was talking about, it went through the log and it kind of pulls some information. Very, very handy. Think about this as an opportunity to address an issue before you even open an SR ticket, right? I mean, that's how powerful this is. So let's kind of walk through how how I'm going to use the product to get to this end result, because this is the power of the solution, right? So Brandon talked, and Bill, I think, raised it. It's a user interface. This is, once you install it, you take the IP address and boom, you're just right in. You can log in with the sh-admin username. I actually created my own special password, and it's not VMware in a bang and one in a bang. So let's see if that works. There you go. So, okay. So now what we just did is we logged in to SHD, and this is the user interface, right? The first thing you see is the ability to collect logs. And if I go into my system, right? So let's kind of click on this. Hopefully it's sitting there. All local IPs. This is a dark site, right? I mean, it's behind any firewall. Nobody can see this. So I can't connect it to Skyline. So really, this is my tool to check if my environment is healthy, right? All right, let's go ahead and log into my vCenter. First, let's do a little quick check connection. And again, another password. Maybe I shouldn't put root at the top. How about that? Right. All right. Let's go. All right, so the connection is there. I could literally click Run Diagnostics. And so what that will do is it will take me to my vCenter environment, and I can select anything I want to run diagnostics again. What this will do is it will pull out the log files. It will process them, and it will create that end result report that I showed you originally. I'm not going to do this right now because it's going to take a couple of minutes to do all that work. So I'm just going to cancel out, and I'm going to show you how this would actually work. What would happen is, this is the process. It will take the log bundle, it will pull it, it will analyze it, upload it, do an analyzed bundle, and then create the report. So those are the steps that are going to happen in the background, and that's what this OVA is doing. That's what the solution is doing. Now, what I did is I bypassed and clicked the upload and log files, and this is where, if I don't have connection to a vCenter, but I have the log files, I can load them in, and I can still use this tool to process the data. So that's kind of the same exact thing that's happening here would happen if you do it on the automated process that I showed you earlier. Now, before I go to reports, I want to pause, and I'm going to just show you a couple of the other things that are important from the application perspective. Settings, right? So earlier we talked about user management. We talked about passwords. All that is managed here, right? The ability to connect back to the customer experience program, very important. And of course, you can connect and update, upgrade and update all the data that's needed to process those log files. So that means, the compatibility matrices, the VMSAs, et cetera. All this stuff is happening here. And for upgrade, again, you can automate it, or you can just manually upgrade. Okay, so that's a very, very simple approach in managing this application. There's not a lot of complexity here.
So real quick, before we move on, there's a question here in the Q&A.
Yep.
What's the minimum supported vSphere version for Skyline Health Diagnostics to work with?
We answered that question. Now, Brandon, was that, did they stop at 6.5? Did they say that? Or I can't remember the
Yeah,
answer.
so they will support it on any version that of vSphere that's currently supported. So it's 6.5 and up. Because there is similarities in the log bundles between 6.0 and 6.5. 6.0 may work, but it is not guaranteed to work.
Cool.
And
Thank you.
I'll just make a comment here. If you're on 6.0, maybe you should consider upgrading, huh? That probably is it would be a good idea, right? But yeah, so thanks, Brandon. Any other questions, Bill? Nope.
Yeah, there is one more.
Okay.
So this question here, it says the literature says Skyline Health Diagnostics is doing log analysis. And wondering what the scope is of that is. Is it really just looking for like the phrase error or warn in log files, or is it actually doing like a deeper dive into the contents of that logs?
So I can take this one.
Okay, go.
So it's doing a little bit deeper dive. So I mean, obviously, when you see that error, that warn, it's going to flag it, but it does do additional pattern matching to call out, specifically beyond the error and the warn doesn't match a known issue that we have, and then ties that back to the KB or whatever particular issue it may be. So, it is obviously, there's some high level pattern matching going on, but it does use much deeper analysis as well to pinpoint the actual root cause.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to continue. And obviously, just pointing out as people were talking, I was going from one click to another, just to show you that from an upgrade perspective, you can upgrade the tool, you can upgrade the database. So there is all that information that Brandon was talking about, and that architecture diagram is actually here, right in front of you in the user interface. Let's move over to the reports. Remember, I kind of walked you through the collection of the report, but I didn't click, continue. Well, I did that before the demonstration. It took about 276 seconds to run this report, as you could see. And you could see one of the things that I didn't show you was the fact that I could give the specific report as tag. And this way, if you have a lot of them, a tag will help you kind of filter through. And you'll see when this becomes important when I go to the actual production environment. But I did show you that report, and there's ways to get to that report. One of them is to just click here, and all that will do is take me to the report that I originally showed you. Now, let me kind of make things a little more complex and skip over to a different environment and a different report and a more complicated report here. So you could see, so this is a totally different report that's coming from a totally different Skyline advisor, a lot more complex, a lot more information. And you could see here, if I look at it, it has a lot more detailed information, just exactly like we showed you earlier, but more specific to more applicable to a real environment, right? So you can see the gigabit Ethernet has a not listed here. This actually not checked. If you go down, I could show you the controller. And then if I go a little bit more deeper, you could see some of the warnings in regards to the supporting based on the releases. Now, how did I get to this report? Yep, go ahead.
Is there anything in what you're showing right now on the screen share that Lifecycle Manager in vSphere 7 doesn't do? I guess I'm seeing a lot of what I think is redundancy, and the only explanation I can think of is that this works on vSphere 6.0, I'm sorry, 6.5 and 6.7, which of course doesn't have the new whiz-bang features of vSphere 7 Lifecycle Manager. So of course this makes sense as applied to older versions of vSphere. I'm trying to figure out why I would run this against vSphere 7.
Because if you've got a dark site, you have to remember, if you have a site without external connectivity, Lifecycle Manager is going to be a dud unless you load those things manually. Okay. This allows you to have basically the latest VCG and pull it into a dark site. And then the other aspect is this reactive log analysis. That's not anywhere in VLCM.
Is that good, Zach? That is Zach, right?
I guess I've got a follow-up question on the log analysis question that I asked earlier. So I heard the response, but I guess I'm a bit confused. If is Skyline Health Diagnostics filtering what gets painted in the report and only showing errors that it can actually associate to a known KB, or will it show me every error even if there's not a KB associated with it?
It will show issues that are tagged to known KBs and known findings. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a KB. It could be something else, but it is only flagging issues that we know for sure are correlated.
Okay, so if my environment is just broken and I know absolutely nothing about why it's broken, and if I run Skyline Health Diagnostics against it, there's some probability greater than 0 that it's going to report back, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my environment simply because whatever happens to be wrong with it isn't associated with a known finding, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, so let's go back to how do we get to that report? So I said earlier, if you can see here, you could be running these reports, these bundles, as many times as you want, and different bundles can be imported. So one of the things that really is important is to make sure you tag it, right? The question that may come up is, well, all these bundles that come in, are they living inside of Skyline Health Diagnostics? The answer is no. Once the bundle is processed, the bundle is dropped, and the report is what's maintained. So in this case, if you look at this report, this collection here, which is a lot more complex, also allows you to kind of break down and hone into a specific area, right, and a specific issue, and literally bypass that gigantic report that I showed you earlier and really hone in on a specific issue that you may have. The key takeaways here is, from a dark side perspective, instead of being blind with an issue and waiting for maybe a support person to help you, it's really cool that you could just upload the log file and run a diagnostic quickly and maybe help you solve an issue before it even goes into the support process. It's a quick way to maybe solve issues that you're having, or better yet, being proactive against a situation or an environment where maybe it's not maintained, updated regularly. So on that note,
Can you
yeah,
can you just set customer expectations? If I run this against an environment that's failing, certainly VMware has not actually added every single knowledge base article to Skyline Health Diagnostics, and probably never will because there's thousands and thousands of them. Do we think that the average customer experiencing the average outage, if they run Skyline Health Diagnostics, would have an answer to their problem, or do we think that the average customer would probably not have an answer to their problem?
So we have
At least
actual
as of
numbers for
today.
that. Yeah, we have numbers for that. So the numbers that they've shared with us is that 50% of the times that you run health diagnostics, you find the answer to your problem. The other 50, you'll have to open an SR. That's the numbers for about, over 1,000 customers that are using this right now. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I figured you were doing a mic drop, so I wasn't going to respond. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah,
I'll give a quick example with me and one of my customers. They were having an issue with stability of vCenter. And so, I said, hey, let's go ahead and open a support case, but let's also run this tool. And so we ran health diagnostics, and we very quickly found out through diagnostics here that their vCenter was undersized. And, that led to a conversation around, why that would be and whatever else. And they added additional resources. And sure enough, that stability issue went away. Could our support organization have identified that? Absolutely. But using the tool, we came across that, much quicker on demand, right? They were very interested in running that log bundle and just finding it at their own speed, at their own pace. And so the issue is resolved very, very quickly by using the tool. And it maybe would have been harder for them to troubleshoot without opening a support case anyway. So speed to issue resolution was much quicker because of the tool.
For the folks who've used it, has the experience been such that you would strongly support your customer slipstreaming this into their support workflows? In other words, before you open an SR, check SHD? Or has your experience been such that that maybe sounds nice, but would perhaps slow things down and customers wouldn't get enough benefit out of it to justify doing it?
I mean, I'll give you my take on it. When I'm working with my customers, and I heavily promote using this tool, I tell them, open up a support case and then kick this thing off.
I second that.
Yep.
There's
absolutely.
an SLA that, the clock is ticking. And if they can go back to the support engineer and say, hey, actually I used Skyline Health Diagnostics and I found the issue, then great. That's fantastic. But I would hate for them to run the tool and pour through it just to have not started that timer by submitting that support request as well. So I suggest they run it in parallel, not because I think that it's not going to find something, but I think it's just, it's the value of time in issue resolution.
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
best practice. It's a best practice though, Bill, too. That would be the recommended approach. That's what I recommend is, you open an SR, right? And then you wait for a response depending on the level of the level the SR is opened at. So at this point, you're sitting around saying, okay, I got a problem. How do I solve it? Well, press the button, let it do its job, and let's see what the findings are. It's as simple as that. And then you could do your own investigation, spend a couple of minutes, as I did here, to identify a couple of issues. It could be what Bill said. It could be a time saver. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I do want to recap before we kind of pass it back to Brandon to bring up that PowerPoint slide. So the takeaway here is time, right? How do I save time in an operations environment, right? I could open an SR quickly and wait for somebody to get back to me, or I could do that and also run SHD and then do some of my own investigation and maybe be the hero, right? And find that information. Why not? On the other hand, this could also be a proactive tool in a dark site, right? Where you're just sitting there saying, do I have this? Do I have this VMSA? Am I covered? You run the diagnostic and at least you get another point of view. And most important is it's a lightweight tool. So it doesn't hinder the infrastructure at all. So with all that, hopefully this was helpful. Let's pass it over to Brandon to bring up one more slide for you guys. And then we can open up to additional questions.
Hey, Chris, real quick, before you kill your screen share.
Yep.
Could you go back to a report real quick with all the colors and everything? Like load up one of them.
Well, let's go ahead and load up this one right here, just so you see it, show everybody.
Perfect. At the top here, the overall findings, when do you touch on the plugins? We see there's 542 plugins. So can you break down what that column looks like there?
Plugins.
What do you? So that just means, the plugins run every time that there's a potential match. That's called a plugin, and sometimes a plugin can cover multiple issues.
Perfect.
And so that's basically saying that there were 542 individual checks that were run on this log bundle. And there are additional plugins are released basically bi-weekly. There's always a new batch that's available.
Perfect. Okay. So then when we're talking to our customers and our customers, load this up to see that there's 542 checks that are run against that log. And like you said, there could be one plugin is one finding, or maybe it's multiple as part of a single plugin. But, we're seeing that there's a lot of things happening against this log bundle.
Correct.
Yep.
Cool.
As opposed to maybe this one, which has 558.
Oh, it has more. It's more up to date.
Yep. It's more up to date. So yeah, and that's important to point out. So
Cool.
keep up to date. All right. Brandon, you want to take it away and just bring up that slide for the folks?
Yep. If you want to stop
want
to stop your screen share, I will get
go.
mine going again.
So we're going to do gotchas and questions for everybody. Hopefully this is helpful.
Great. It's just a sanity check that you are now seeing
We are.
Yep.
Perfect. So tip, tricks, and gotchas. Number one, talked about this a little bit earlier. The admin account is not admin. It is SHD-admin. So just be aware of that, especially if you forget your password and you need to reset it. When you're setting up the appliance, make sure you double check your passwords and that they meet the password complexity requirements, especially for root. And if you forget number three is don't be surprised by the first boot password manager. It's there to help make sure that you're secure. Number four is be aware that the disk space can grow very rapidly when decompressing and analyzing log files. This is especially true, as I think for the most part, thin provisioning is the default, what most customers end up using. And so, when you thin provision the SHD appliance, it's about 2 gigs. It's a little bit over 2 gigs. Now, let's say suddenly you might have a large log bundle, which is 10 or 20 gigs. It's going to upload that, and then it has to decompress that zip file. So you're looking at, a very large growth, in a short amount of time, for it to do that analysis. So just be aware, especially in thin provision environments, that will happen, and capacity plan appropriately. And then number 5, I want to call out a couple of configuration maximums just to be aware of. So you can kick off concurrent collect, log, and analyze operations up to 4. So you might want to, say that you've got multiple vCenters for whatever reason, and you want to pull logs, you can do up to 4 at a time. Within each of those, there's a maximum of 33 targets. And each ESXi host or vCenter is a target. So you can kind of think, if you're pointing a vCenter, you pull in vCenter logs, your vCenter plus 32 hosts. So that's what you can do in a single collection. You are more than well, if you need more than that, you've got more hosts that you want to run, just split it apart into multiple collections and you'll run those separately. The other thing to be aware of, finally, is there's a maximum of 50 reports that will be retained in the tool. If you go over that, the oldest will start getting purged automatically. So if you're done with the report, you can delete it out of the tool manually so you don't hit across this limit. But just be aware of those config maxes.
Do you know if the logs get retained alongside the reports, or do the logs get purged after the reporting is done?
The logs are purged immediately when the analysis is finished.
Okay, so there's not 50 reports worth of logs sitting around.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was confusing, right? Because what Brandon is talking about is the file that, let's say you open a 30 gig log file. Well, it has to get processed. That's what he's talking about, decompressing and analyzing. After it gets processed, that's when it disappears. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that should answer Gregor's
hang on,
question.
Andre. There we go. How you doing?
Oh, we got some people on mute. So that was one of the questions I just got. We got also Brandon on the chat about the logs, so that should be good. There's also one more question here. Are TSCs aware of this tool? I think so.
Yes, they are. So TSCs are aware. They've put some training in place. And so, in fact, in our internal systems, there are certain customers that when they go to the SRs, they will be shown that, hey, this customer might be a good fit for Skyline Health Diagnostics.
Yeah, good point.
Great.
It's actually decorated in Salesforce.
Yes, it is. At the top, at the very top of the.
we have a couple questions here in Q&A, and maybe if we want to move on to more of the Q&A section here, they're kind of related. How do we handle updates to the tool and the dark sites, as well as are there any other ways to ingest logs other than pointing to a vCenter and a host?
Yeah. So for the first one, for the updates, there are offline update bundles that you can download off the downloads.vmware.com site, and then ingest those into the tool from within the SHD administrative interface. So that's how you do any updates in a dark site. And then for ingesting logs, either you point to a vCenter or host, or you do the upload log bundle for if you already have the log bundle available or generated already. As of right now, the only logs that it looks at are vCenter and ESXi hosts, and it does also within those ESXi hosts does look at vSAN information in those log bundles as well.
And then for the tool updates themselves, for the dark sites, those are generated, you said bi-weekly, right, as well. So okay, perfect. So That's great. Thank you. Okay. Next question on here. If there's still a dependency on the TSC supporting the issue, so they still need to be involved in some fashion, will the TSC have access to the health diagnostics report output and the logs?
I can answer that. I mean, the question would be, how would they, right? It's all in the dark side, right? But those logs could be shared with the TSC and they can run the same thing on their side. So,
And I've had a customer who also provides the report from Health Diagnostics as an artifact to a case as well. So when they open it and they provide, background and whatever else, that's just an additional piece of information they share.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone at this time?
Well, then I guess we'll call it. Brandon and Chris, thank you so much for the time prepping and running through this. I know that, a ton of our customers love this and even more would find value out of it. So this is fantastic. Everybody, thank you for the questions and the commentary during the session. And we'll go ahead and end the session. And thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you at the next TAM Lab.